I'm Patrick Murphy. My wife and I have been involved with JAHMI since August of 1985, and we have a son who's been in the program since August of '85 till currently 2025. I'm just going to give you a little bit of the history which explains mental health services in Alaska before JAHMI. Prior to 1959, mental health services for persons with mental illness or developmental disabilities were considered to be crimes for insane persons at large. I want to emphasize how unique JAHMI's journey is. So, turning to JAHMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill came into being in 1979. And between 1979 and 1985, 600 chapters sprung up around the country. JAHMI was one of those 600. On March 29, 1985, Sharon Lobaugh filed for a NAMI chapter. We were able to get a grant in 1986 to buy a 3-story building right next to the governor's mansion, and that was in 1986. We're still, you have to understand, we're not the mental health center. We're just a volunteer chapter, and family members actually staffed that building in 1986. But in 1987 or 88, Sharon and I wrote another grant for 2 fourplexes near the Lemon Creek Jail. It was during the economic downturn in 87 or 88. So the bank had foreclosed on these 2 fourplexes. And so we got each one for $50,000 each. And so that was the second set of buildings that we had. Again, housed by family members or volunteers. We were able to write a grant in '88 to get our first staff person. So at that point, we actually had a staff person as well as the volunteers. What began to happen is a question arose, are we going to run things only with volunteers, or are we going to be a professional organization? The City and Borough of Juneau Assembly, especially Kevin Ritchie, the city manager, and Donna Pierce, the deputy city manager, I assume were observing the work that was happening, that JAHMI was doing with their volunteers, the staff. So at some point in, whether it was '89 or '90, they approached us about becoming the statutory mental health center, meaning they were going to transfer the statutory mental health duties to JAHMI, thereby becoming the statutory mental health center instead of CBJ. As far as I know, at the time, and it may or may not be the case, of those 600 chapters across the country, JAHMI was at that time, as far as I know, the very first one to morph from a family education support group to the statutory mental health center. So that was totally unique. I'm not sure the exact date, but we also, John Egan and I, wrote another HUD grant for a 15-unit apartment building on the beach in Douglas. Turning to how we obtained the headquarters building for JAHMI, which is at Lemon Creek. That building used to be the City and Borough's Department of Education. We owned a building which for a short time was the drop-in center next to the Baranoff Hotel, where now there's the asphalt parking lot. It was owned by a man named Glenn Prince, who was a realtor and an appraiser. We traded them that building, which they proceeded to tear down and put a parking lot in. We traded that building for what's now the headquarters of JAHMI, which was the City and Borough Department of Education building. And so that's now the current headquarters of JAHMI. Behind the headquarters building, I wrote an Alaska housing grant for the 2 eightplexes that sit behind the headquarters building. There are 2 eightplexes. And so those 2 grants, that accounts for the 2 eightplexes. I also wrote a grant for what we call the lodge. Joe Henry and I came up with what's called a condominium complex. We put the headquarters building, the 2 eightplexes, the lodge land, and Joe Henry owned the land across Lemon Creek where the birthing center is and where the cancer center is. So we put all that land in a condominium complex, which meant that we were able to simply control without having to put in a dedicated street, sidewalks, sewers. In summary, I can only say we were very fortunate to have a force of nature like Sharon Lobaugh to get things started. We were very fortunate to have 2 really skilled, caring executive directors, Brenda Knapp for 14 years, Pam Watts for 11 years, and JAHMI. JAHMI is unique because as far as I know, it was the first one and maybe the only one that morphed into the mental health center from a family support group. There were a number of people that I remember like Janice Carter, Mary Shapansky, Alice Walters. You know, these were people, John Egan. These were people that were very, very competent, very skilled. We were tremendously lucky to have terrific staff like them, and then we were very blessed to have a powerhouse like Sharon Lobaugh to get things rolling, and then 25 years of really excellent leadership from Brenda Knapp and Pam Watts. And so that's pretty much the history of 40 years, the best I can recollect.